Again, I feel like I'm getting reverse Uno carded right now. Layne, did you actually read the entire study? The first time I can really remember getting into YouTube was about 8 to 9 years ago, and I was watching a ton of Layne Norton's video logs because I was an undergrad in exercise science and also reading a bunch of research articles in school. He was a science-based content creator and a fellow exerciser, so it fit perfectly. Since then, I have bought his books, merchandise, pre-workout, and of course, still watch his YouTube videos to this day. I would say I agree with about 99% of what he says in all of his posts and videos. That leads us up to a couple of days ago where he posted a video about turkesterone. I was super hype for this video because he loves reading the literature, so I thought he was going to do a deep dive of turkesterone and ecdysteroids in general. Well, I watched it and I was pretty disappointed, especially because the video is getting so many views and people respect his opinion on any given topic. He always states in his videos if there's any additional evidence to post it in the comment section below, but since I am now a content creator myself, I decided to make a video about it and go through and dissect his video piece by piece.
Now, every time I do a Q&A on my Instagram, I get this question at least half a dozen times. What do I think of turkesterone?
As I said, since he was getting asked so much about it, I thought we would get at least 5 to 10 articles he would go through and critique about turkesterone and ecdysterone as well, since it is getting a similar type of hype through Derek and Team 3D Alpha's videos as well. Also, when Derek first talked about this product, Derek had 15 plus studies to back up why he wanted to release it. So I thought Layne would go through those as well.
There's a lot of literature that indicates, how it increases muscle protein synthesis and, reduces myostatin and does all this crazy shit. And this video is going to end up being very long if I actually show it all. I actually have about 15 studies up in front of me that I was going to show, and this video is pushing 35 minutes already.
So let's see what we get from Biolayne.
So I did a literature search of turkesterone and muscle growth, and I found one article written in Russian that I could not decipher. There is one study I found where they gave ecdysteroids. They saw increases in muscle mass and strength.
So he's inferring that there's not much evidence both on turkesterone and ecdysterone, and there needs to be more studies. And he is right. I have said an abundant amount of times that there needs to be more human studies done. So this is a perfectly valid critique.
I get really nervous when I see studies that exist in isolation that show improvements in muscle mass and strength with absolutely no proposed mechanism.
Layne, did you read the study? I feel like I'm getting the reverse Uno card from Layne right now, where he gets pissed when no one reads the studies, but this study clearly says the proposed mechanism of action. The study in question says that the mechanism of action of ecdysterone appears independent from androgen receptor activation, but it is rather exhibited by the activation of estrogen receptor beta. However, further investigations of ecdysterone are recommended, which I totally agree. Now, does the estrogen receptor beta seem to have an anabolic effect without the use of androgen receptors? I'll refer to Derek on this one.
We see selective estrogen receptor beta activation stimulates skeletal muscle growth and regeneration. So we can see there is a very substantial, depending on how you want to define substantial, stimulation of skeletal muscle growth via this separate vector of estrogen receptor beta agonism.
So there's a proposed mechanism of action. Let's keep going.
And this is where these ecdysteroids become interesting, because if you look at some of the other studies on it, we can see here estrogen receptor beta is involved in skeletal muscle hypertrophy induced by the phytoecdysteroid ecdysterone. In this, they say the phytoecdysteroid ecdysterone was reported to stimulate protein synthesis and enhance physical performance. The aim of the study was to investigate underlying molecular mechanisms, particularly in the role of estrogen receptor beta. So in this study, they found that ecdysterone was so worthwhile in exploring for anabolic muscle growth stimulation that it should be put on a doping list.
And what was really puzzling to me is that it seems that Layne didn't go through any of Derek's videos where he shows study after study linking to as why this product may work, and Layne didn't go through any of those. I understand that people in the comment section are saying that Derek didn't go to school for this and Layne has his PhD in protein metabolism. So I thought that Layne would go through these studies and either debunk them or side with Derek. And on top of it, Layne has said before that you don't need a degree to read scientific studies.
I mean, I don't want to kind of pitch an ivory tower scenario where I'm just saying, well, if you don't have a PhD, then you don't know anything, because that's not true. But it is really, really difficult to read and interpret studies unless you have a long history of doing so.
And as we know, Derek has been digging through the research for about a decade at this point, and in this specific niche.
And the reason I say that is because we know for a fact that ecdysteroids do not bind to human steroid receptors.
And I couldn't help but laugh here because I've probably watched almost every video Layne has posted in the last 8 years, and he says repeatedly that you should be very skeptical if anyone ever says something is fact, because pretty much nothing in science is fact. But yet here he is saying this is a fact.
I'll always do this in all my seminars. My first opener is I'll take a pin and I'll drop it. And I'll say, hey, look, gravity worked again. But by the way, gravity isn't proven. You can't prove anything in science.
Now, I am not an expert on human steroid receptors, but I am pretty sure estrogen receptors are part of the human steroid receptor group. The 6 related steroid receptors in vertebrates are the estrogen receptors alpha and beta, progesterone receptor, androgen receptor, glucocorticoid receptor, and mineralocorticoid receptor. And again, the one study Layne said he read through thus far said this in the conclusion: the mechanism of action of ecdysterone appears as independent from the androgen receptor activation, but it is rather exhibited by the activation of the estrogen receptor beta.
We know for a fact that ecdysteroids do not bind to human steroid receptors.
And as Derek has shown, and other studies have shown as well, the activation of estrogen receptor beta seems to be a pretty significant factor in stimulating muscle growth. Let's keep it moving.
Again, if it's promoting the accrual of lean body mass, we would expect to either see an increase in protein synthesis or a decrease in protein breakdown, which would affect net protein balance, allowing for increased deposition of muscle mass.
I'll now go to the people that seem to be the experts in phytoecdysteroids that have been researching this practically their entire lives, like Lawrence Dinnen, who has been researching this stuff since 1998, and see how they propose that these things work. Admittedly, these hypotheses aren't facts, but most things in science aren't fact. And these pathways have been backed up by most of the ecdysteroid research. They start out by saying there may be several signaling pathways through which phytoecdysteroids promote muscle growth. One pathway of anabolic response, as said earlier, was through estrogen receptor beta, so we won't go through that again. Without getting confusing, the second pathway that ecdysterone may activate is the G protein coupled receptor MAS, or MAS, however you want to pronounce it, which its activation has been hypothesized to enhance protein synthesis in muscle cells, which is why we might see the positive outcomes in skeletal tissue in studies. So, not one, but 2 proposed mechanisms of action. Layne goes on to say the limitation of the human study was the bioelectric impedance monitors, and I definitely agree. Better measurements could have been taken, but the strength results increased regardless of the body composition analysis results.
There is a study from a lab I do trust, from a person named Tracy Anthony, who actually came out of the same lab that I came from.
So are the people that have been studying phytoecdysteroids their entire career not trustworthy? It was just weird to me the way he said that, to where it was like all the other phytoecdysteroid research means diddly squat, and he kind of came off pretty shitty, to be honest.
Her lab took 20-hydroxyecdysterone, which, remember, is an analog for turkesterone, and they looked at its effects on mTOR, protein synthesis, and mTOR signaling in mice. Not only did they not see changes in protein synthesis, they did not see an increase in mTOR activity or any mTOR signaling with administration of 20-hydroxyecdysterone. So if you're going to argue that ecdysterone is anabolic, then I would like to know what your proposed mechanism of action is.
Again, I feel like I'm getting reverse Uno carded right now. Layne, did you actually read the entire study? Among the pathways affected by nutritional status, mTOR is one of the most important cellular signaling hubs in the body, regulating cell growth, autophagy, and proliferation. However, the path to improved body composition does not have to be mediated through mTOR. Alternate mechanisms requiring future investigation include phospholipase C and C-AMP protein kinase A, reducing protein breakdown, altering vitamin D status or action in muscle, and increasing lipolysis so as to improve lean body mass. Tracy Anthony et al. Literally lists off the other mechanistic pathways that this anabolic effect could be achieved in the conclusion. I mean, you can't make this stuff up.
And voila. And voila.
Voila.
Let's see what the experts in phytoecdysteroids say about this study as well. Bioavailability of the ecdysterone was poor in rats, and even using something to enhance its bioavailability did not result in increased phosphorylation of the signaling components. These data appear to be in conflict with those of Gorlick-Feldman et al., but the route of ecdysterone application was different. Unfortunately, it is not known if the rats used by Anthony et al. Would have demonstrated muscular hypertrophy, as animals were killed after 4 hours or less after given ecdysterone. So yes, mTOR signaling was not occurring, but the mice never even had a chance to see if their muscle or strength increased through other vectors, like the pathways Anthony et al. Said might be occurring, because they were killed 4 hours after they were given ecdysterone. Again, this threw me for a loop because he put so much emphasis on this one study when, as a PhD with a focus in protein metabolism, he has to know that there's other pathways to increase protein synthesis or decrease protein breakdown. And on top of it, this study doesn't even show strength or muscle increases. And that's what everyone is focused on that is taking this supplement anyway. Oh, and let's gloss over the studies that contradicted this study, aka showed the opposite results with mTOR, which, by the way, also showed strength and muscle increases. And let's only show the one study that my old friend and colleague did, because I trust them. He literally just emphasized multiple times how there's only one human study that was positive, but then shows one mice study that was potentially negative. We don't even really know because they didn't show the muscle or strength increases, and puts his stamp of approval on it and says ecdysteroids don't work.
Now, going back to my thoughts on turkesterone. Guys, this stuff isn't new. Maybe a slew of research will come out in the next 5 years showing that this stuff is the latest and greatest. But it's been around for 20 years.
He may be right. Maybe ecdysteroids don't work. But I do have a couple of hypotheses here that I would like to go over. First of all, dosing is crucial. I have no idea what the doses were, but still to this day, supplement companies underdose their supplements, such as pre-workouts, where sometimes they don't even give you the minimum effective dose. Even up to just a couple years ago, some major supplement companies were protein spiking their whey protein powders to say there was more protein when they were actually just using nitrogen fillers, which actually Sean Nalawani did a great video on. I mean, you couldn't get third-party testing like you can now, so we really have no idea what was in any of these supplements. And we kind of still don't know to this day. Lastly, the bioavailability of ecdysterone is not good, as Layne showed in the study that he presented. That is why Derek has tried counteracting this by complexing his ecdy and turk with hydroxypropyl beta cyclodextrin complexes to make sure that his product is as bioavailable as possible. So in this situation, maybe there was a product that on the label had an efficacious dose, but not only is it not very bioavailable, the actual product contains only 10% of what it actually says and 90% fillers. So in this case, people are buying it, using it, it's not working because it's only 10% of what it really says and it's not bioavailable. So they're telling other people not to buy it, and then the product fades. In the supplement industry, I can see that being a realistic scenario that could have happened. What is the conclusion here? First of all, I 100% agree with Layne that there needs to be more human studies. However, Layne knows how hard it is to actually get human studies done.
They'll say, well, why didn't this study do this? Or why didn't this study do this? And the answer to your question, my friends, is always money, 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 and money.
Also, for those that don't know, at least in the US, usually you have to do studies in vivo or in vitro first, which is in a petri dish. Then you get to do it in animals, and then you get to do it in humans. So it's a very, very slow process to actually even get to the human studies. And like Layne said, you need the money there as well. The studies that we do have are in mice and show positive outcomes. And you might say, oh, well, they're in mice. Well, one, that's all we really have to go off of right now. And two, even Layne said himself that mice studies that are about protein metabolism usually translate pretty well to human studies.
Rodent models for human protein metabolism have been shown to be pretty good. In most cases, the results do transfer over, and that was the case for my research, which was in rats, which was later validated in humans.
There are several proposed mechanisms of action for ecdysteroids, but it seems that estrogen receptor beta is likely involved, but it would be great to get more evidence to point to how exactly estrogen receptor beta and ecdysteroids interact with one another. However, the layman watching Layne's video would think the researchers have no idea what the mechanism of action is, and that it, for a fact, does not attach to the steroid receptor, while many of the studies have given a proposed mechanism, one of which being a steroid receptor. To me, Layne's statements are very misleading. I will also tell you, I'm not sure if it works. I have never advocated in my videos that you need to go buy this stuff and that it's the next best thing since sliced bread. A ton of people have asked me about it, so I decided to dig into a bunch of the research and run an experiment on myself so I can try and give you the best possible answer. From my perspective, of course. Admittedly, I love Layne's content and the education that he has brought to hundreds of thousands of people. However, on this specific topic, I feel like he dropped the ball. I know several topics in which he read every single study and then came to a conclusion.
I actually went through those studies, like every single study.
I wish that's what he did here, because I think if he did, he would be a little less pessimistic about the compound and say that it has some potential, but of course more research needs to come out. To me, and this just may be my opinion, but it seemed like he got bombarded with questions about it, was pretty annoyed, skimmed a couple of articles, and responded with a get off my lawn type of video. And that anything that isn't proven in the data umpteen times and isn't already popular can't work, and said so in the video that he came out with. On top of all of this, he did many things he calls people out for, like cherry-picking research studies by using only his former colleagues' mice study, while showing none of the positive outcome studies. Also, stating things as fact, which he always says in science, there is no facts, and seems to be wrong about the fact that he presented, saying that there was only one human study, but then only presents one mice study and uses it as his basis for conclusion, and didn't even seem to read the entire studies where a potential mechanism was stated multiple times. So what is my current opinion on ecdysteroids? I think they work to some degree, but I am not sure how much, and also not sure if they are worth the price tag. If you are an advanced lifter or have the disposable income, I would understand if you bought a few bottles to try it out. However, I think every lifter should try and max out their genetic or maximum potential while simultaneously having their diet, nutrition, and sleep regimen in place before they try any products like this. Now, if Layne comes back and absolutely annihilates me with his knowledge in protein metabolism and literally disintegrates every study out there, then I would absolutely love it, because that is what I was expecting with this video. Refuting the papers Derek or I have presented could definitely sway my opinion in the other direction. However, showing one study that doesn't have anything to do with muscle size or strength definitely doesn't change my outlook at all. And similar to Layne, if evidence starts coming out that shows ecdysterone or turkesterone doesn't work, I will change my opinion and make a video on it, saying I was wrong. I understand that I work with Gorilla, but this entire video has strictly focused on the research and what Layne said himself. Nothing else. Nonetheless, the studies that I have read, the experience that I have had so far, and the anecdotal evidence I have seen has been mostly positive, so I have no reason to think otherwise.